Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Truth Without Podcast. Good morning. Yes. All right. So, today I'm going to be going over why I'm convinced Jesus Christ is who he claimed to be. So, this is why I'm convinced, okay? So, you have three different languages. I had to write these things down just because there's so much. But there are three different languages. It was written over three different continents. Is it three different languages, three different continents, 39 different authors over a period of 1400 years, from physicians to tax collectors, kings, priests, shepherds, Pharisees, i.e., Saul, Paul, and when you think about that, and then when you think about Bible prophecy, and you're like, how are they so accurate? And this is the one thing that I think the opposite spectrum, don't really understand. I was watching a video, and Sean McDowell points out Bible prophecy, but he's like, anybody can pronounce, completely dismissing Bible prophecy. And sounds like he hasn't done his research, because there are not just general prophecies, there are specific, and that's what they'll usually do. They will generalize it, but no, there are specific prophecies. And let me give you the exact one. There are over 108 specific prophecies that are not overlapping. The overlapping ones are 192. So even if, let's just say, for the sake of 102, scholars differ of how many prophecies are in total, maybe 700 to 1,000, give or take, depending. I don't know where they get that number, but yeah, there are quite a number of prophecies, quite a number. So when you think about that, and when you think about the specifics, that the Messiah will come, and that he will be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. He'll be lacerated according to Isaiah 53. He'll be scourged for our iniquities. The chastisement was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. That's where we get that he was lacerated. You also have Satan, the first prophecy in Genesis chapter 3, I believe, verse 15, where he says, he tells Satan, you struck the heel of the body, but I will strike a blow to your head. Isn't that interesting? And if you're familiar with the cross, did you know, fun fact, did you know that when Jesus, every time he lifted up to take a breath and to speak, his last statements were, they called the last 7 sayings of Jesus? Did you know that his heel was being bruised literally on the cross? Isn't that interesting? Yes, because every time he was lifting up, because it was like this, he would and his heel would be scratched. And so God is saying, you struck the heel of the body, but I will strike a blow to your head, in reference to death. The sting of death is sin, and the power is the law. But as Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 55, O death, where is your sting? O Hades, where is your victory? Death has been swallowed up. Thank be to God through Jesus Christ. Because death couldn't hold down Jesus. And Jesus like, go away, death. Shoo, bye-bye. And that's exactly what he did. He said bye-bye to death. And he defeated death. He conquered death. So let's not get sidetracked, but you have specific prophecies, right? And one group of people who were part of a Texas University Bible institution that teaches the Bible and stuff, they likened it to 1 in 10 to the 17th power. So basically, you put a man, and they likened it to this. You put a man in the state of Texas, blindfolded, putting 5 silver dollar coins buried 2 feet deep, one marked with an X, and sending the man off. Okay, go find those silver dollar coins. That is what's the word I'm looking for? That is the same example of how difficult it is to prove prophecy. Now, what are the odds of him finding it, right? Let alone the one marked with an X. And yet, that's likened it to 8 Bible prophecies. Isn't that interesting? And yet there are over 108 prophecies fulfilled. That's very interesting. So the mathematical probability is improbable. And yet and I would challenge anybody, even my viewers that don't know Jesus, give me another book that gives specific, not general prophecies like the Nostradamus. You might quote Nostradamus or somebody similar. But there are specific prophecies that he would also be born in Bethlehem. And be betrayed by a close friend for 30 pieces of silver. The list goes on. But yeah, so that's why I'm convinced. One pastor put it this way. He said, Bible prophecy is as significant as a breadcrumb trail to mankind. As God said, I prophesy from things of old, the things that have not been seen, and I will do all my pleasure. So God prophesied these things, and they were fulfilled because he sees the end from the beginning. And so, but not only that, you have that's the probability. That's very difficult. And I've had it when I was going to college, my professor, anybody can do that. If anybody can do that, then it would be normal. Yet you don't find it in any other book. You don't find it Bible prophecy in the Quran. You don't find it actually you do find it with the Jehovah's Witnesses. But interesting enough, they likened it. They quote a bunch of prophecies, and you can look at them, do your research, look at them, that Jesus would come back. And so their conclusion was that Jesus came back invisibly, in which there is no scripture for that, coming back invisibly. In fact, Jesus said that, or the angel said when he was speaking to the apostles, when they were just watching Jesus, and they're like, oh wow, Jesus is leaving in the sky. Can you imagine that? Jesus leaving, you're just like, come back, Jesus! And the next, the angel's like, why you men stand gazing? He's like, what are you doing? And he's like, go do some work now. And he said, for in the same like manner, Jesus will come back. And there's actually a prophecy that Jesus will come back and split the Mount of Olives in half. Literally. Now, from my understanding, the Mount of Olives have not split, so that means Jesus hasn't come back. And that's exactly how he says he will come back. He says he will come back in the same like manner, splitting the Mount of Olives in half, literally, in Israel. So, yeah, Jesus did not come back at the Watchtower organization. And what does Deuteronomy say? Anybody who prophesies something, and if it does not come to pass, then I did not tell that person to prophesy. He said, reject that man. Reject him. Have nothing to do with that man, because that man will be judged accordingly. So you have that, and then you have internal, external consistency, i.e. going back to the specific prophecies. Not only that, and when you look at the literature of the Bible and the way it's written, it says in the 3rd year reign of Jehoiakim or something, or somebody you might see, and so begot so. It gives a historical record of who Jesus is. But interesting enough, though, did you know, as I've gone out and shared throughout the years, I find that people are so critical about the Bible. They really are. And granted, that's fine. No problem. Put the Bible under scrutiny. It can handle it. Totally can handle it. But the one thing that I see with anybody outside of the Bible is that they don't do the same method. When they test other religions. They say, oh yeah, all roads lead to God, whether if you're Buddhist or Hinduist, type thing. Excuse me. You're not consistent. Why are not you consistent if you're watching this? Why aren't you consistent? Why don't you use the same method as you test the Bible? Why don't you use it to every other religion? And I would say simply because the Bible separates. The Bible makes some statements, and we see that. We see that Jesus claiming to be God. That's another reason why I'm convinced. that one in particular, the life of Jesus and the apostles, because of their testimonies. I was watching one man debate with Sean McDowell, and one of the things that he also pointed out, completely dismisses that, eyewitness testimony account, that's not an evidence. I'm like, sure it is, especially in the court of law. If the court of law uses it, we can use it. And J. Warner Wallace points out, and I've shared this throughout the years when I've gone out and shared the gospel, I shared with people, I said, did you know, and I'm going to tell you, did you know that there's a way to test and see if the apostles were telling the truth? Did you know that? Yeah, they fall under 3 different categories: greed, lust, or power. And when you go through those, they didn't gain any of those. They didn't gain greed. Jesus said, don't store your treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, but where thieves will break and steal. But store your treasures in heaven, for where your treasure, there your heart will be also. So, it's not about riches on earth. They didn't really gain anything, No one really wants to have an eternal perspective, You have greed. Lust, no, what about not just in lust in regard to women or men, but lust in the desires of this world? The Bible says, for all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. So it's not just in spiritual adultery, but it's also in other things, lustful for other things, other possessions, people's possessions, coveting people's items. So you have that, right? But did they gain lust? Did Jesus give them permission? Not really. Jesus said, that don't you know from the beginning that he made the male and female, and what God has joined together, let no one asunder, let no one split them in half. And let me give you an example. The idea is that putting 2 plyboards together, glued together, and trying to rip them apart. And God likens that to marriage. Isn't that interesting? And the interesting about the plyboard, get this, when you split it in half, did you know, and I think you know this, it does not go back to the original. Both plyboards do not go back to the original. In fact, some pieces might go to the other, which it tears it apart. And that's what God likens marriage, splitting apart marriage, because it was his institution. He created it, and he likened it for eternity, that death do you part, literally. No splitting, no divorce. He hated divorce, and he said, the reason why I gave you divorce is because the hardness of your hearts, he tells the Pharisees. And so yeah. So greed, lust, and then power. What about power? Did they gain power? Not really. Did they gain authority and influence? Not really. And let me explain why. They were being persecuted. Now, you have to ask yourself, and this gets into another argument why I'm convinced Jesus Christ is who he claimed to be. In that Jesus, when he was betrayed, and when I witnessed all of that, right? Peter talks about in 2 Peter 1:16, for we didn't come up with cunningly devised fables, but were eyewitnesses unto his majesty. We didn't make these things up, he's saying. We didn't make these things up. We didn't say, okay, let's cobble a story together and let's fabricate it. No. And what is the show of evidence for that? The fact that they went to their death. Willingly die and convinced that Jesus Christ is who he claimed to be. That's very interesting. Now, the only way they would go to their death is if Jesus did die on the cross for you and me. That's the only explanation. There's no really other explanation for that. Excuse me if you have one. I'd love to see your comments down below. But from my understanding, there is no explanation for that. There's no explanation for them believing what Jesus Christ did if they were lying. And they're the ones professing Jesus Christ rose. So what are the odds of that? But I have to cut it short here because I'm trying to keep it at 15 minutes. But something to chew on. God bless you guys. I love you. Most importantly, he loves you. Okay? Take care. Rest in his grace and his mercy. God bless you guys. And this is just the first part. There's going to be another part.